Well, here we are, and after a few months of feeling a little bit more worn down and depleted and burdened, I have to say I am feeling lighter than I have in a good long while. Now, in case you're sitting there and asking yourselves, gosh, I wonder what her secret is. Has she perhaps discovered some incredible new eating and exercise plan that has transformed her life in 2020? No. Is she getting better sleep perhaps? No. Has she achieved that kind of elusive work-life balance that we're all told to strive for and is eminently achievable? I laugh in your general direction. No. However, we are at the end of our blame dunder knit along, and as such, the burdens, the blame, the accountability that has rested on me these last few months, that has all flown the coop and been turned into some of the most incredible projects. I'm very much looking forward to chatting about them with you. Hello there, Pickles, and welcome to episode 38 of the Knitting Vicariously podcast. My name is Caroline. I'm found more commonly across Instagram and Ravelry as Dunderknit. I'm a knitter living here in London, and if this is your first time joining us here on the podcast, a big hello and welcome to you. A very quick word of warning as ever, just to let you know up front that this is a swearing-friendly podcast, and therefore the language, it can get a little bit colourful at times. If that's not your bag, I completely appreciate it. However, this will not be the podcast for you. So thank you so much for checking us out and feel free to move right along. However, to the rest of you, whether you be swearing fans or indeed just sweary tolerant, it is delightful to have you back, and I really do hope that you're well. We've just edged into February, and somehow the start of the year is both a very long time ago and yet also I slept and now January has gone. I'm not totally sure how to feel about it, but here we are. In the Northern Hemisphere, certainly in my part of the UK, it is a little bit grey and a little bit drizzly, but certainly not too cold. And so today I am making use of slightly shorter sleeves and enjoying that tremendously. In terms of general updates, I mentioned right up front that the Blame Dunder Knit Along has now come to an end. This is the make along that we've been working on over here for the last 3 months or so. It started at the beginning of November and finished at midnight, wherever you happen to be in the world, on the 31st of January into the 1st of February. And so I'm very, very much looking forward to showcasing our final Blame Dunder Knit Along calorie later on this episode. But here and up front, I am also delighted to announce the winners of our prize packages. Now, those of you who tuned into the previous episode will be aware of what some of those prizes are, but I am going to recap them briefly here again, just because a few of those goodies have now landed with me, and I'm very excited to share those ahead of announcing our prize winners. The purpose of the Blame Dunder Knit Along was very much about giving yourself permission to, instead of knitting on something vicariously, to actually be able to relieve yourself of any potential guilt or burden or accountability that you might have felt, and instead just cast on or sew or crochet or whatever making you chose to embark on, but ultimately giving you the permission to take joy in that thing as opposed to consigning yourself to obligations or, you know, just kind of not having the opportunity to take that on board. It wasn't entirely with the purpose of winning prizes, although that's very much a nice bonus. Now, in putting together these prize packages for the 3 different winners, I've had the opportunity to work with some makers that I've mentioned here on the podcast over the last kind of 6 months or so, and I'm so happy to be sharing some of these bits with you. So the first maker I want to talk about is New of Hide and Hammer. Hide and Hammer bags are absolutely delightful. I have a couple of them. I'll show you one of them in a second, but in terms of the prize that we have for the Blame Dunder Knit Along, New mentioned when I spoke to her about this a couple of weeks ago that there was the possibility of getting a little bit of cheeky customization built into these bags. And so, aside from the fact that I opted for the mustard roll top bag because Of course I did. Let me just show you it here. So we have the mustard roll top bag all the way down to here, which has this fabulous little brass clasp. Struggling to show you this properly. There it is there. So you have the base of the bag is sitting here. You then have the roll top itself. I'm doing a terrible job of showing this because I'm trying not to damage this in any way or make it anything other than pristine and perfect, because I want the person who wins this to have the joy of it all themselves. But when Nu mentioned to me that there was the possibility of getting these customized, I got very excited. So all three of our winners will receive this amazing mustard oiled canvas, this sort of waxed canvas finish roll top bag with the brass clasp from Hide & Hammer, with the very special handle. Oh, I'm so excited about this. I'm hoping you're able to read it. Let me hold it up to the camera just in case. Here we go. Nu has been working on stamping customized options as part of this handle, and therefore all three prize winners will receive the bag with hashtag blamed underknit on the handle. This makes me so ridiculously happy. I am just over the moon with this. These bags are one of a kind, well, three of a kind, I guess you could say. Well, no, technically one of a kind, because each of the different bags comes with a slightly different finish here on the handle and leatherwork. So one is in black, as you can see, one is in the tan colour, and one is in a beautiful grey. So slightly different ones. It means that your bag genuinely is one of a kind, and Nu, you're an absolute bloody genius, and I'm so pleased to be sharing these with our winners. And just in case you were unsure, this is my own Hide & Hammer bag. I have the clasp version on this rather than the bolt. I have the bolt is on my gingerbread canvas one, which I really love. But as you can see, I have my own non-customized handle. I might have to invest in one at some point. But it is an absolutely fabulous bag with the roll top, as you can see. It is cavernous. It is just perfect for pretty much anything, whether it be a shawl, whether it be a sweater, whether it be something a little bit smaller. So yes, absolutely adore these bags and delighted to be including some in the prize giveaway. The second thing to be included in our giveaway is, of course, some beautiful yarn. And as I showed off last time round, I am delighted to be including 2 skeins in each of the packages from the wonderful Dusty Dimples, who is based here in the UK. These are both on her Dusty sock base. They are 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. This is her foxy colourway. It's almost like it was predictable that I would have chosen this one. I mean, typecast a little bit. It is the most incredible, just kind of toffee orangey goldy wonderfulness colour, and this other one here is her, I believe it's pronounced Freemore. If I'm getting that wrong, I apologise. It's been a very long time since I did anything that was approaching French in any kind of structured sense, but here we are. These are the two of them together in all of their glory, and they are perfect. So yes, delighted to be including these here and supporting Aisha's fantastic yarn business too. Those of you who are in the UK, particularly in the south of the UK, I do know that Dusty Dimples is going to be at Unravel later on this month, so definitely worth making a bit of a beeline for her stand and checking out some of her incredible yarns, because her colourways are just sublime. Another incredible maker that I've had the great fortune not only to enjoy some of her incredible work, but also to meet in person over the last few months has been Soraya of Malika. Malika is an incredible jewellery brand, again, that's based here in the UK. I will bring her box up here so you can see it. I've shown off some of the earrings from her in the past here on the podcast, and I mentioned last time round that I was really keen to ensure that I had something from her in this prize package that perhaps wasn't too prescriptive. So if jewellery isn't your thing, you've still got the option of making use of this and enjoying her incredible wares. So I am delighted to say that each of the prizes will also receive this little copper brooch. Now I'm going to try and hold it up for the camera to so you can see. You have this beautiful little pin, and then alongside it some of these little crystal stitch markers. One of them in the middle here is kind of on a lobster clasp like a progress keeper, and the others are all little fixed ring stitch markers. You could then go on to use this pin either as a decorative brooch, or indeed if you chose you could make it a shawl pin, you could use it as a big old stitch marker, whatever your heart desires. So yeah, absolutely delighted to be including that here as well. Definitely do check out Malika for any kind of beautiful jewellery designs that you're looking for, as well as the ones that I have, which are the kind of crocheted wire sort of small circles with some of the beading that's on there, the crystal beading that's on there. I know that Siri also does these beautiful kind of crocheted yarn earrings, so actually using variegated yarn, and some of them she's been showcasing on her Instagram feed. They are stunning, and I think again she might also be heading to Unravel. I need to double check that, and we'll confirm one way or the other in the description box below. Alongside those bits and bobs, you will also be receiving some patterns, because yes, my wonderful friend Jen Emerson, who is the designer behind the Jenica hat that I knit earlier on this winter, I have already knit this pattern before and I adore it. Jen very, very kindly is offering up her ebook for the Jenica pattern, which includes both the hat itself as well as the matching cowl. So I'll include her pattern pictures here on the side of the screen so you can appreciate them. But thank you so much, Jen. I'm delighted to be including this here too. Jen's patterns are incredibly clear and very, very well written, so I am very pleased that there may well be some more Jenica things out in the wild. And then last but certainly not least, a little bit of fun. I popped over to my LYS Tribe Yarns down in southwest London in Richmond, just in between Christmas and New Year. And when I was there, the fantastic shop owner Millie was very kind to be able to offer up these. These are little mobile phone stands that can be stuck on to the back of your phone, to the back of your iPad. They'll make it a little bit easier for you to hold it, as well as being able to prop it up should you need to. So whether it's your phone, your iPad, your Kindle, tablet of some sort, you can pop these on the back and then perhaps read along with whatever's on the screen whilst you're also working away on some knitting. So thank you very much to Millie for letting me include these here, and yeah, those are our prizes. So as mentioned previously, there were 3 ways in which you could win a prize in the Blame Dunder Knit Along. The first of those was over on Instagram using the hashtag Blame Dunder Knit Along to coincide with any post that you felt was relevant, whether it be a picture of the yarn that you've just ordered arriving on your doorstep and getting very excited about casting that on, whether it be a work in progress shot of the items that you are working through, or indeed whether it be a picture of your finished object and you proudly showcasing it to the world. I used random number generator. I'm sure there's probably an easier way of doing it, but I did, and scrolled diligently back through all of the different posts to find our winner, who is wool.cookie.hr, who is Elena. She is based over in Germany, and I have to say I recognised her username when I tapped on the picture because her items have appeared in a couple of our calories over the course of the last few months. So the post that was picked out by the random number generator was a work in progress picture of her skiff hat back from the early part of December, and so I am so pleased to say you are the lucky winner of the first of our prize packages. If you could drop me a note over on Ravelry just to confirm that you have won and pass over your personal details, that would be delightful. The second chance that you had to win a prize was by posting in our Blame Dunder Knit Along FO thread over on Ravelry. Now, this is a thread where everyone was posting a single post to include all of their different finished objects. And again, using random number generator, I went in, I found the post, and that post belongs to 9crafty11, who is Julia based in Brisbane. Julia had completed a couple of different items for the make along long, including this incredible Miara hat, which is just a pattern that I've lusted after for quite some time. But she also made a handmade outfit for, I think it was a Christmas party or a holiday party, and again, I remember her name from having featured her in one of our calories, and so I'm entirely delighted to say that one of our prize packages is also heading over to you. And last but by no means least, the third way that you were able to win a prize was by taking part in the Blamed Under Little Long chatter thread, also over on Ravelry. Now, this didn't mean that you had to finish anything, it didn't mean that you even had to cast something on as part of it, although it did make it a lot more fun if you did. But this was an opportunity for everyone just to dive in and start chatting about each other's projects, ideas that they had, and sharing some progress pictures over on Ravelry. And therefore I'm incredibly happy to say that the winner, again selected at random within this thread, is the Batty Knitter. The Batty Knitter is Shella. She is based over in Quebec in Canada, and so I am really very pleased to see that completely at random we have prize packages heading in totally different directions all over the world. And so once again, aside from saying thank you so much to everyone for taking part, please, the 3 lucky winners do send me a note over on Ravelry. I'm not always very good at checking it, but I will be doing that in line with your responses coming through. If you can just include in the subject line that you're a prize winner, include your full details, I will get those packaged up and sent out to you as soon as possible. But again, and I know I'll be talking about this a little bit later on when we showcase our last calorie, but I'm so grateful to everyone who took part. It's been so much fun once again. I will miss this a little bit, and I know I saw a post from someone in the Ravelry thread saying, I'm going to miss the chatter thread. I completely appreciate and understand where you're coming from. There is only so much accountability that I can take on my slopey shoulders, but I will say this is definitely not going to be the end of the Blamed Under Little Long. It shall be coming back later on this year, but in the meantime, I could just do with a little bit of being footloose and fancy free, and you know, maybe stand on your own 2 feet for a little bit and take accountability for your own yarn purchases for a change. I mean, they can be inspired by me. Inspired by me sounds a lot friendlier than blaming on me, but you know, ultimately it's just semantics. It's fine. So yes, there you have it. Now, the makers that I have included in the prize package, I will make sure they're all linked in the description box below, which is where you will be able to find show notes for this episode. Similarly, you can find show notes over on Ravelry, where there will be an individual episode thread for this week's episode. You can also head on over to Instagram and follow the Knitting Vicariously Instagram account. This is separate from my own personal account, but it does include links and relevant hashtags to everyone mentioned in this week's episode. But moving into the knitting proper, some of the content for Works in Progress is a little bit thin on the ground this week, but you know, we'll make it work. It'll be fine. Before we get into that though, a quick mention to say I am wearing my Siri pullover. This is a pattern, a modified pattern by Linnea Öhman. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Apologies, my Swedish is non-existent and therefore my pronunciation risky. But this is a pattern that was originally released as a cardigan pattern, however, is very easily modified into being a pullover. It just means that you knit it in the round. If you do want to follow any of my modifications, please do feel free to go over to my pattern page. I will include it in the show notes for this episode. There are, of course, an awful lot of other people who've done something very similar, and so if my if my project notes are a little bit, you know, hazy or fuzzy around the edges, feel free to take a look through some of the others. That is one of the greatest things about Ravelry, and why I love it so very dearly, is that you can look and have a little cheeky snoop on other people's project pages, and where they have written far more detailed and helpful notes than my own, you would be able to find out a little bit more about how they have done it themselves. But yes, this is a pattern that's knit, I think, in sort of DK worsted weight. I used Tosh Merino DK, which is the Madeline Tosh single ply, roughly DK weight yarn in the Espadrilles colorway. I will stand up so you can see it properly. Here we go, we have the obligatory Siri boobs, of course. This is my version of the Siri sweater. I knit it with 3/4 length sleeves, as you can tell, and I added in a couple of extra increases on the shaping of the sweater just to give it a slightly more kind of floofy A-line shape. Now, I have lost a little bit of weight since I knit this last, I think almost 2 years ago now. I knit it for EYF back in 2018, but that being said, it still fits really rather well. So it isn't particularly fitted on the sort of lower part of the sweater, but the bust and around this kind of textured yoke pattern, which is my favourite detail about this whole thing, is really where it counts. Let me move my hair out the way so you can appreciate this a little bit better. So let me get all up on your grill with my boobs. There's a phrase. So here you have it. It is exactly as obnoxious in person color wise as it appears here on the camera, but these textured twisted stitches are just to die for. I love this so much. But yeah, really wonderful pattern. Highly recommend you checking it out. Again, being DK weight, it went reasonably swiftly once you'd reached through the end of the twisted stitches in the yoke here, and the shorter sleeves make it work really nicely as well. The only other detail is I've got another little folded, oh hello, sorry, focus is questionable there at best. There we go. I have used a folded neckband technique here, and it is one of my favourites. I'm conscious I was wearing my beatnik pullover last week, which I'd also done a folded neckband on. I really like the way that it sits, that it finishes off a garment. It means that you don't have sort of the harsh line around where you've cast on or cast off. Instead, it looks a little bit more polished, and it's also just a nice little bit more cozy because it snuggles you in a little bit at the neck, which I appreciate. It's not for everyone. It is my personal preference. So here you are, Siri pullover. Ta-da! And we are back. I have to confess, part of the reason for wearing this today is because it is so very grey and dreary outside. I'm also hoping it's going to help the camera to focus, because when I wear more neutral colours, it tends to get more excited about the backdrop than it does about me, and I can't say I blame it, but still, hopefully this means that the focusing should be okay this week, given it is quite gloomy around at the moment. But with no further ado, I'm going to move into actual knitting, and no FOs to share this week. Now, you're sitting there saying to yourselves, Caroline, you had a little bit of knitting still to do on that fluffy teddy bear onesie that you're going to give to your friend who is due to give birth tomorrow. Now, you know, babies don't always work to due dates. That's very much their prerogative, I suspect. But also, you know, you really need to crack on with that. Yeah, haven't touched that fucker in 2 weeks. Nope. I will get it done. I absolutely will get it done. I was waiting for more yarn to get delivered because I knew I was going to run out. That yarn got delivered. I'm running out of excuses. So it will get done. I will go back to it. It will happen. I will bang it out. I will never make it again. We'll never speak of it again. Apart from the one where I'm going to include it as a finished object. Hopefully next time we'll see how that goes. So yeah, not that. Crashing on. I hinted at the fact that knitting content was a little bit slim on the ground this time round, and yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's happened in the last few weeks. I think I've had a few weeks of working late, a few days of working late, a few days of going out and seeing people and meeting up, but then for the most part I've still had some time to knit. I just don't appear to have done that much of it, but I will say I have worked a little bit on my hard cider pullover. So just as a reminder, hard cider is a pattern by the fantastic Thea Coleman. She is an absolute marvel at all things cabled and cozy and textured and glorious, and this is no exception. Just before I show you the project itself, I will say it is living in my Nerdbird Makery project bag. I picked this up at Indie Untangled pre-Rhinebeck last year now, and it is one of my favourites. Aside from the fact it showcases our wonderful community of knitters and crocheters and makers generally in a way that I find absolutely charming, it's just such a wonderfully well made and practical bag. So yeah, definitely one of my favourites at the moment. But as I mentioned, living in here is my hard cider pullover. I will bring it out for you to see. It is a little bit hard to showcase this yarn. Might have just poked myself in the cheek with needles, don't worry about it. It's a little bit hard to showcase this yarn and this project, one because it's gloomy and two because it's dark. The yarn, not the gloomy, we'd already covered. Anyway, moving on. But this is my version of hard cider that I'm knitting up in the Harrisville Nightshades colorway Cinder. Cinder is the one that's blended with a little bit of orange that you might just be seeing a hint of in this light. I'm not going to hold it up to the camera this time around because it will blow the camera out and look just deeply inaccurate and unattractive. Unattractive. That's the word. But what you can hopefully see is I have at the top here the folded over turtleneck or polo neck, if you want to call it that, in ribbing, and then I have started increasing for the raglan portion of this sweater. I'm not yet at the point for dividing for the armholes. This is a little bit sloggy, to tell the truth. There's a good few 100 stitches on the needles at the moment. It is a DK weight yarn, so it shouldn't be that kind of crazy, but I know that the lace is coming. I'm just trying to, you know, push my way through to it. So yes, still working on this at the moment. I do have, just to show you where the bottom of the ribbing is, my cutie little progress keeper, which is my panda, because monochrome appropriate. You see if I can get the camera to focus. There you go. And actually that's showing the cinder up reasonably well as well. This is my little progress keeper from the fabulous Hannah, who is the corner of craft. She is a just genuine delight of a human being and makes these incredible little beaded progress keepers too. So there you can see how much knitting has been put into the body of this sweater so far. Yeah, still, as I say, ploughing on with this a little bit. This is a pattern that sizing wise does a pretty great job of being inclusive, so it runs from a size 37-inch bust all the way up to a 64, but it is designed with a fair bit of positive ease. So even though it starts at a 37, it's designed to be something with a fair bit of ease to it there. I will confess I am knitting it with a bit less ease. I wanted something that fits probably a little bit close to my Siri actually over my bust and then sort of runs fairly straight down from there. So I'm knitting something with pretty much no ease from my bust measurement, which is that I'm knitting I think it's the 41 3/4 inch, which is pretty close, slightly negative to my bust size. And so I'm looking to get something that fits slightly differently, but at the same time, yeah, it's just what I personally prefer. So I have not swatched because we know that I don't do that. It's not a thing in my house, but I have been checking my gauge as I go because I'm not a complete masochist. So yes, I was checking that as I go along here, and with a little bit of blocking it should be absolutely fine. I am knitting this on 4mm needles. It is a US size 6 and I'm knitting it using my Chowgu needles because they are my needle of choice for all things garmenty, and I think just knitting generally. I really love my Chowgu needle sets for that. But yeah, so continuing to slog away on this. It is going to take a little bit longer for me to get certainly into the lace portion, but I'm hoping to spend a bit more time on that in the next couple of weeks and start banging this one out a little bit, so to speak. Now, I said I wasn't totally sure where all of my knitting time had gone, and actually maybe that was a little bit of a white lie because I did cast on something new. Now, before you go, you know, kind of finger wagging at me because you know I've still got stuff on the needles that I need to be working on, I was missing a little bit of a commute project. I wanted something that was kind of fairly light that I could grab on the go. I'm not really into socks at the moment. In terms of the other small projects that I've been thinking about, I know I want to do something with the Oak Hollow mitts, but they're colour work and it's a bit of a faff. I needed something that was quite kind of grab and go, that I wouldn't necessarily need to be checking in with where I was on a pattern or so on and so forth. Now, there's a pattern I spoke about here a good few months back now, that is one that caught my eye and I just thought it was really, really lovely. It's quite simple. It's more about the sort of colours or the sort of yarn types that you're combining as part of it. And so I cast on the Mondays scarf by Camilla Vad. I'll put a pattern picture of it here just to remind you, but yeah, this is a really simple but really effective pattern. It is a scarf. as you can see, and it's a fairly straightforward pattern to be working through, but it's really pretty enjoyable. Now, I picked up a handful of these yarns when I was in Rhinebeck, not last year but the year before, so again 2018. I went to Brooklyn General and discovered Biche et Bouche yarn for the first time, which is ridiculous considering it's yarn that I believe comes from Scotland and is made in France, and therefore buying it in New York felt a little bit laborious, but there we go. But I came back with I think 3 or 4 skeins of this in a few different colours, and when I was toying around and trying to find the yarns that I wanted to use to cast on for this, there were at least 3 of those that seemed really kind of nice to play really nicely together. So here's where I am at the moment. It is a very little bit of knitting and the colours are not showing up particularly well at all, but let me just hold that up and see if you can see them a little bit better. You can just about see, but it's fair to say that the sort of gloom and the colours are not really shining to their best effect. So I have here this kind of beautiful kind of dark, it's more of a really sort of dark navy or dark charcoaly navy than it is a true sort of black, and then I have this kind of beautiful slightly minty duck egg blue that sits underneath it, and a light marl grey down at the bottom, and the stripes, which you may be able to see here, are actually more of a kind of a sort of greenish tinged honey yellow colour. It's a really pretty yarn there. So this, I will say, this yarn here is actually this is Rauma Phenol PT2, and it is one of their Heather's colorways. So let me just pop this down. So yeah, in terms of, do I have the yarn colorway in here? I don't think I do, but just to let you see what it looks like. There we are. That's showing up a little bit better. So this is the yarn that I'm using as the kind of contrast between the stripes, which, as I mentioned, is Rauma PT2. It's a little bit thicker than some of the others that I'm using, which is the Le Petit Lamb's Wool from Biche et Bouche, but because it's only being used as that stripe for a few rows in between, it really doesn't make much of a difference at all. The other yarns that I'm using, as I mentioned, are all the Petit Lamb's Wool. And I have, I'm not going to be able to hold all these up together. Oh, I might actually. Maybe tell a lie. So it is these here. So I have the light grey, the medium grey, this kind of amazing deep charcoal, as I mentioned, and this is now showing up a little bit better here too, which is the sort of, I think it's called light turquoise, but it's definitely more of a sort of minty-ish colour. And as we all know, much as I love the mint green, can't pull it off, looks dreadful on me. We've established this. I know there are some people out there who thinks it looks absolutely fine, and that the mint green boxy wasn't a complete hideousness. You are very polite, but quite wrong. So this, because it's in with a load of the other colours and it's sitting in amidst kind of all of these greys, I'm hoping there's an option to maybe offset it a little bit. If it doesn't work, it really doesn't work, it's fine, I can gift it. I want it to work, but if it genuinely looks dreadful and I look dead next to it, then, you know, we'll see what we can do. But these are the colours that I'm working with. So I used the lightest grey here for the cast on at the bottom and the ribbing. I then went into the duck egg blue, the charcoal, and so next up is going to be the medium grey, and then there will be a stripe in there, so it's going to look like that is the colour sequence for the next few. So yeah, really enjoying working on this. It is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. I will say the Le Petit Lamb's Wool is quite fine. Let me just, if I can put this down for a second and actually get the use of one of my hands back, that would be helpful. So yeah, as you can see, the yarn that I'm working with, and I am going to have quite a few ends, is quite fine. It is a fingering weight, it's definitely a fingering weight, but because it is lamb's wool, I do think it will plump up quite a bit with blocking. I am going to be blocking this quite aggressively, both to stretch it widthwise and indeed lengthwise, because let's be honest, this is a scarf and it's going to be ages of knitting. Just decades. So yeah. And that's why I look at this and I kind of go, I haven't spent a huge amount of time knitting this fortnight. And then actually I think, well, do you know what? So I will confess, so I've deviated slightly from the pattern. The pattern has you knit a certain number of rows in between here for each of the different sections. I did that many rows with the first colour, with this kind of light blue, and thought, doesn't really feel chunky enough. So I have actually knit 24 rows, which is a bit more than the pattern recommends. I'm not going into too much detail because it's a paid for pattern. But yeah, I've knit 24 rows rather than the pattern's specified shorter length, which just means that, as I say, I'm expecting it to be a little bit fewer sort of pattern, colour changes rather, but a little bit blockier as I go. So yeah, I am knitting this on, I believe, a size 3mm needle, which is a US 2.5, because your sizing is weird. Said with love, but yeah, I'm knitting this on a size 3mm needle, which is, I think, a little bit smaller than the pattern recommends, but the pattern recommends you knit it with a heavier fingering weight yarn, and so I'm happier for it to be a little bit thinner. Again, I'll block it and stretch it a little bit. I just didn't want the gauge to be a little bit sort of loose and have the wind whistling through the gauge of the scarf itself. So yeah. This has been the bulk of my knitting over the last few weeks, and, you know, unless I get my shit together, there's going to be a tiny child brought into the world who's not going to look like a teddy bear, and I don't think that's acceptable. But that's it for the knitting content this time round. Moving along into vicarious knitting, and there are a few patterns that have caught my attention this time round. The first of those, because it's cozy jumper season in my part of the world, is the Narnija sweater. This is a beautiful pattern by Svetlana Volkova. I'll include her pattern picture up here, and I mean, hopefully you can see why I fell for this, right? It is textured and cozy and just all of the things that I love about a sweater. I just, doesn't it look just like the most, you just want a massive cup of coffee and to be, I mean, clearly we've established that's not something I need right now, but a massive cozy cup of something warm to be curled up on a sofa, maybe a blanket over your lap, doing a little bit of knitting, wind whistling around outside, and just, perfect, perfect. This is a sweater. It's knit out of bulky weight yarn. It's knit from the bottom up, which we've established it's not necessarily my favourite type of construction, but the bulky weight yarn does make a difference. It will certainly be speedier, which is no bad thing at all. It has the mock turtleneck, which clearly I'm quite into at the moment, between my hard cider and a couple of ready-to-wear sweaters that I've bought recently. Quite enjoying the high neck thing at the moment, I've got to say. One thing I will say though is the sizing for this pattern isn't as great as it could be. It's a 35-inch bust up to about a 52. It's designed with quite a lot of ease to be built into it, and so if you assume that there's kind of 4 inches of ease in there, that means the largest size that this is available for is a 48-inch bust, and that's not really good enough. So while I do really like this pattern, I desperately hope that at some point the pattern designer is perhaps going to include a couple of extra sizes in there too, and I'll certainly be dropping them a note just to recommend that as well. A very quick note on that, I do usually try and choose patterns that are pretty size inclusive, but one thing that struck me recently is, rather than just kind of ignoring the ones that don't, is that I actually want to do a little bit more and try and take a bit more of a stand on this. So while my bust size at the moment puts me in a sort of medium-ish category, I guess, I have certainly come across patterns in the past where I've been a kind of 46-7-inch bust and the largest size has been a 42. I call bullshit on that. I call bullshit on that very hard indeed, and certainly for those who are considered to be XXL, XXL at a size 44-inch bust is fucking outrageous, to say the least. And so rather than just ignoring this stuff and instead choosing to put my money and time into perhaps working from designers who are far more supportive and inclusive, I actually also want to try and call out designers who could do a little bit more in that space. Now, I know it's not necessarily simple or straightforward in the sense that it requires people to do more than they have done historically, but I also know that there are plenty of assets out there that help people to be designing rather more inclusive sizes there too. So it's not something I'm going to go into. I'm not a designer. I'm not going to sit here and espouse and wax lyrical on that side of things. I'm going to hold my hand up and say I am not an expert in that space at all, but I do know that there are a number of resources out there if you choose to look for them. Happily, my second choice this week is a little bit broader in the sizing department. This is the Alatau pullover by Ainur Bakimbayeva. It is the most beautiful, again, kind of textured and cabley all over. Just goodness, clearly I'm into the cozy pullovers at the moment. Did that become apparent? It might have done already. But yeah, this is just squishy and glorious and divine. It is also, as you may have guessed, knit out of nightshades, and this is the yarn that I'm using for my hard cider pullover at the moment. It is therefore knit and designed in a DK weight yarn, so pretty versatile in that extent. And as I mentioned, sizing wise does a great job. It starts at a 36.5 inch and goes all the way up to a 67-inch bust. There is a little bit of ease that's built in there, but you can obviously choose to flex that either way. So all in all, much happier with the sizing in this pullover. From what I've seen, this is a top-down pullover, therefore again it's a construction that I really do quite love. I believe it's also knit in the round, and so, you know, it gets my vote in that regard. I'm really keen to cast this on at some point, and I'll definitely be doing a little bit of stash diving to see what I have to suit. Last but by no means least is another pullover. Well, this time actually it is a cardigan, I have to confess. Now, this is something that rather than being kind of, oh, big squishy and cozy, is actually something that does a great job of balancing a little bit of cozy comfort with a little bit of smartness too. This is the Water Bearer cardigan by Jacqueline Cieslak. It is a beautiful cardigan, pattern picture here of course, just with this incredible little design of brioche here on the front to really elevate the whole thing. Brioche is something that I've done a little bit of it in the past. I've never done it in a garment. This could be a great introduction to it. Now, I will confess that I don't normally go in for cardigans. This is something that, as I say, it feels like a really nice balance between something that is perhaps a tiny bit dressy and something that is just big and squishy and cozy. And the brioche definitely adds to that kind of swoosh factor. It is knit in a DK weight yarn, and the sizing of this is also pretty excellent, as you would probably anticipate from Jacqueline. She has mentioned it is an upper bust measurement, so you're taking your bust measurement here from your high bust as opposed to around your full bust, but that measurement runs from 30 all the way up to 57 inches, so fantastic news there. I believe there are also a couple of different options for length, and the pattern is both written and charted, making it pretty darn accessible all the way round. And so those are my picks for this episode. Now, I'm conscious that I am losing the light here, and I'm also running out of things to talk about, but as I mentioned right up front, this is the final time that we're going to be showing the Blame Dunder Knit Along for this bout of blame-free casting on. And so, moving along into your own knitting projects and some vicarious knitting for all of us to enjoy, I present to you for one last time the Blame Dunder Knit Along Calorie. To everyone who has taken part and made this the utter joy that it has been to watch and follow along with, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know we've already given away our prizes. I would love for every single last one of you to have received something wonderful out of it. And I really, really hope that whether you were able to complete, 7 projects, or indeed if you were just able to cast on 1. Do you know what? Even if you didn't cast on anything, but you followed along and you took joy from others, that makes me so incredibly happy. And so to every single last one of you, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and do not fear, we will do this all over again, just maybe not for another few months. But I am losing the light over here pretty drastically, so I am going to pull things to a close. As ever, thank you so much for watching, for supporting the podcast, and for commenting. It makes my heart incredibly happy indeed. I am going to head off now and start editing this because I'm starting to look a little bit grey and ghostly on the camera here. I am trying to avoid getting my studio lights out when I can because they tend to wash out everything that's behind me. Although when it gets as dark as it is right now, might be worth considering a rethink on that. But as ever, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you have a wonderful rest of day, rest of week. I hope your knitting is keeping you happy and fulfilled, and if for whatever reason it isn't, I hope you have the opportunity to knit vicariously. Keep on keeping on, and I will see you again very, very soon. Bye. Well, here we are, and after a few months of feeling a little bit worn down and depleted and interrupted by traffic outside. Super good start. Now, just in case you're sitting there and asking yourselves, gosh, I wonder what her secret could be. Has she perhaps stumbled on some amazing new eating plan? And oh, I can't even get through that without laughing. Oh, so much bullshit. Getting a little bit more sleep than usual. No, perhaps she has manifested this amazing work-life balance and everything's just coming through and shining up roses. I mean, I fart in your general direction. Well, here we are after a few months of feeling a little bit more watched by helicopters. Awesome, cool, good news. Now, just before you sit there and ask yourselves, gosh, I wonder what her secret could possibly... Oh man, getting a little bit more sleep than usual. No, perhaps she's manifested this amazing work-life balance that we're all told to strive for and achieve and generally should be, kind of really aiming for in those upper echelons. I mean, your mother is a hamster and your father smells of elderberries. I will get through this intro. Sometime, some week, somehow.